Hi everyone, welcome to this episode. I am starting to work on a new character. This new character is going to be for a between Kickstarter release. It is the Iguan Poacher, and it's also going to be featured as the first character I'm going to develop through a Patreon. If you aren't familiar with Patreon, it's a way for me to interact with patrons and gain a little bit of support as I work through the creative process. And in return, I let you guys in on my creative process. So as you could see in that first little glimpse, I was working on the face for this new character. That's a place I really like to start. It gives me a good chance to explore some of the character's personality, and that's a good launching point for the whole project from there forward. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to change the head or even necessarily use the head that I initially sculpt, but it gives me a chance to sort of get in character a little bit. Now this is an Iguan, which is the lizard men from Relic Blade. Or at least one of the types of lizard men from Relic Blade. There are a lot of different animal, mutant, hybrid, magical creatures in Relic Blade. So because it's an established race from Relic Blade, I started with the last Iguan sculpt I did and started to use that body as a core for, things like proportion and the musculature and stuff. So what I'm doing is taking the assassin that I had already sculpted and moving each of the subtools into a new pose. There are a lot of different ways that people go about posing or reposing a sculpt, and I find that for my brain and for my workflow, treating it more like an action figure is more helpful for me to be able to process the whole endeavor. So I have the parts broken down kind of as the parts of an old G.I. Joe action figure. So, the 6-inch G.I. Joe action figures, they had articulation at the knee and at the foot. Actually, they didn't have it at the foot, but I'm doing at the foot. The hips, maybe that funny rubber band thing, so I can do separate the core a little bit and work on posing it as if it were an action figure. And that helps me play a little bit with the pose and start to really refine it and move pieces in a subtle way to make sure that I'm capturing the action of the pose, but then also capturing some kind of anatomical, reality. There are certain poses that I could make that would be unrealistic, that, a shoulder joint that's too far apart or just awkward. If you've played with an action figure, that you can pose it in a way that looks unrealistic, or if you take a little bit more time, you could pose it in a way that's more realistic. And because I've played with toys a lot when I was younger, I have a lot of experience posing characters, and now that works out really well for what I do for a living. So yeah, now you can see me getting in, and even though a lot of the musculature was already sculpted for the assassin, you could see me get in and start to adjust some of the musculature, because not only will the muscles move when the pose changes, but they'll also they'll be flexing in a different way. And this is a different individual. He shouldn't have the same scars. He shouldn't have the same distinctive characteristics as the assassin. So I'm not using that body as a way to just repose and it'd be like a quick throwaway, I basically made 2 models out of one sculpt. Instead, I'm using it as a basis for, this is what this race is like, this is what you can expect from an Iguan. And then I'm reposing and then also starting to get in and really make the musculature unique and everything. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of the great benefits of being able to work digitally is that I can jump in, reuse assets if I need to, repose a model, make copies. If I were making an army of soldiers, I could easily, rearrange parts in a way and make a whole unit of these guys by just changing equipment or pose, or having same equipment and just changing the pose. So, it's definitely something you can do, but I try not to rely on it as a crutch, particularly for Relic Blade, because you only use a couple of figures, so you don't need your unique hero level characters to be represented by models that look the same as each other. Like, that's something I really want to avoid. So one thing you'll notice if you're able to watch the frantic sped up video is how much time I spend moving and readjusting pieces that I already put in place. So with this pose, it's starting to be pretty close to what I go with, but as I look at it, I see that it's not really perfect. It's not exactly what I want. The posture I change later. I move him so he's more upright instead of hunched, to get that expenditure of energy. As he's leaping up, he would have more of an up motion in his body. I adjust his leg a lot. The leg that's leaping up and has that really intense bend in the knee. I spend a lot of time of it adjusting how it connects to the hip and how the knee is adjusted from there. But this process, even though you can see me sculpting in musculature and stuff, this is really all in the reposing process for me. Really taking the time to get the pose right. And that's, to get in the mindset of the character, I like to do the face, and then the pose is super, super important, making sure that I get it in place early. And that's part of my personal workflow. Is I don't want to be working on something in a T pose. I want to have every element of that character associated with the fact that he's in this pose. I want the flow of the cloth that I sculpt. I want the way the collision of whatever equipment that he has. I want it all to be related to the action that's taking place in the pose. I don't want to have to go back and resculpt cloth or resculpt elements to make sure that their armor isn't bumping into each other or weird things like that. So I really prefer to get the pose down early on. And it helps me visualize things like how the muscles are acting, how the clothes are acting, and also adds to the excitement because it's a little bit closer to being done. I've had some people ask me a little bit about symmetry, because if you've worked in ZBrush, you may know that there is a symmetry tool where you can have it mirror on the x-axis. And often what I do is work on one body part at a time, and then I can actually just copy that body part and mirror the body part. I don't just use the natural X mirror technique. Except on a face. That's one of the few times I do it. But otherwise I don't sculpt musculature that way. I don't sculpt arms or hands or fingernails that way. So now we're getting closer to the end here. I have the pose pretty much how I want, and that's a quick look at the things I think about and things I work on while I'm reposing. I treat it like an action figure, and I always am trying to think about the motion, the movement, and capturing something in the pose that's going to be an expressive quality of that character. Now, you'll be able to follow the progress of this sculpt and any future sculpts if you do follow me on Patreon and pledge as little as $1 or up to $10 will get you access to new rules and new game elements as the game grows. I really appreciate you taking the time to look at this. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments below. Go ahead and like and subscribe and do whatever you can to help more people hear about Relic Blade and hear about what I'm doing here at Metal King Studio. Thank you.